Hello and welcome back to another Pinnacle preview. Today we're going to be looking at the EPL Group B. So last time you recognized some of these faces, AZR, Dennis, Hawka, and now we're joined with NATO, who we found out isn't our resident Dane anymore. So yeah, it'll be interesting. But I want to start this off. We're looking at Heroic in this group. They're the bigger one. And they're spoken a lot as a team that has 5 very solid players. But I want to put this out and hopefully this can spark a little bit of a debate. Who is their best player right now?
Ooh, that's a bit spicy.
Right now, you've got to say Jabbi, right? Just based off of the Katowice performance. Like, the guy was an actual beast, right? Like, just individually, he was just dominating. So, individually, he's got to be, like, decent. But you also got, like, stan in the lineup. You got Katie and, like, it's just like an all-star young lineup, right? So, it's hard to say. But Katie in last tournament also played really well with the open in-game leader role and proving that that can be done. So, yeah.
Yeah, it feels like it's every other day there's a new star. It's like they're so good. They're really talented. So every day a new star, pretty much.
Yeah, like I think also what's special about Heroic is that it's really one of those teams where you cannot point out a single player for being a weakness. You know, like you can argue who is the best player on the team, but really the roles are so well done in a way that like Shush is an insane anchor, for example, and I would even say he's maybe like currently the weakest player. Whereas Kadian just came out in an interview saying like Thesis is the mechanically most skilled player on the team. Whereas I, as a viewer, would say probably syrsoN is. I've played with him as well. I've actually kind of played with both, but syrsoN is like mechanically so insanely talented, right? And then, as you mentioned, Aaron, like Jabbi had, I think he was the top performer of Katowice, and then Kadian as well. Like, I mean, they made the final. You have to say, in terms of the strategical side, he's also done his job for sure. So it's just a team with very few weaknesses. I think saying who's the best is actually super hard on Heroic.
It's hard, isn't it?
yeah. They don't have any weaklings at all. They're all really talented.
Did you guys see the HLTV post that was recently about like how different teams work in terms of like, I remember the usage of words was like crows and like kind of bait or something like this. It's like how the trading works in different teams, and some teams the roles are super clear cut that like there's one guy he's always running in, like let's say G2, okay, Huxi, he is the bait, right? And let's say Nico and Honda are the guys who are trading the most, and then there's like a lone wolf in, let's say, JKS, something like this. Yep. But with Heroic, it was like everyone was kind of the bait, and syrsoN was the guy trading, but they were so closely connected that it's like at any day it could be anyone who has like a star role, kind of. And I think that's why it's also so tough for us to point out
in that way.
Yeah, and hard to point out a star player or like the best player, because everyone in their roles have the potential to be it on a certain day, which is not so traditional in Counter-Strike, I guess.
It almost feels like they're like a mini Astralis of like 2018, 2019, right? Like they're just all stars in their shit, and they're just all solid. And like you said, like different days, different stars, you know, just a solid team.
Yeah, they have the same mentality. Seems like if they are ready to die for each other all the time, they have the same mentality. They're on the same page. That's actually very, very nice to hear.
Yeah. I also feel like, you know, kind of similar to Astralis, I feel like even though they're not the best team right now, they're the ones I feel like that are kind of setting the meta almost. Like I think a lot of teams are starting to take some of the CT stuff Heroic do with their aggressions and their big stacks. So I think they've been like pretty innovative in the way they play, and other teams are finally catching up. I feel like the one thing I am waiting for is, like, for the longest time, I really feel like syrsoN can be a true like star player, like real top player in the world. And I've just been waiting for that, because that is the one thing that is maybe missing, is just that one player who's always there, always showing up. You know, you look at like all the other top teams in the world, apart from, I guess, FaZe earlier, who didn't really have like one crazy standout player. I feel like you always want one standout player on the team. But honestly, it's kind of getting to the point in Counter-Strike where like there's so many skilled players. It's actually hard to have someone stand out that much in general. Like it's just so stacked across the board.
Do you think syrsoN is being held back from being that star player because of how compact this team is, how tight they are? Because he's had appearances on the top 20 in the last few years. So do you think it's the actual style of that they can all just play that same role? They can have a different player be that star depending on the match. I think that's keeping him back from being that player.
It's funny to talk about, right? Because like before Katowice, like coming into that tournament, you would have thought like syrsoN is like the star player of the team. He's the consistent player, but he had a pretty rough event, and then that's where jabbi shined. So like if he drops off, then there's always someone else to like be there in replacement. You know, like just top solid players. But I don't think it's really a stylistic thing. I think it's more so there's like if someone else does it, maybe someone else isn't getting enough space to be the best that they can be. But that's just going to happen, right? In situational Counter-Strike, like stuff can just change.
Yeah.
I think
this
also
is
like, oh yeah,
yeah.
sorry,
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Oh, okay. I think no. I think you know, I actually do agree to some extent. Like I think if they had a more traditional team with like an IGL who was like a rifle and jumping a lot in front and stuff like this, it's easier to have like big carry performances consistently, right? But I think also syrsoN, having played with him, he's happy also to not be the star. He's just so talented that he automatically is one. Like that's always the case with those super talents like syrsoN, m0NESY. I used to always say Brollan as well. I think he still to some extent is, right. Maybe not the same kind of super talent like, but or frozen or whatever. Like these are people who can integrate into a team structure without being the star. But if they have to be the star, they can also be the star. But they're never going to complain about not being the star, kind of. And that's what I think is like so cool to have with a player like syrsoN.
Yeah, absolutely. But I guess this is why Heroic is so strong as well. If everyone plays for each other, I mean, if they don't only play for syrsoN, let's say that they bait for each other as well, then he doesn't shine as much, right? But as you say, he's still a star. But he could shine even more if the system was around him instead of around everyone. But I believe they're so strong because they play for each other all the time. That's what makes them good, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Denmark is a region we continuously see to, be at the top of the CS ladder. And it's not in the same vein that maybe like Swedish, French, or even Polish CS has been. That's kind of died down in terms of national teams. So why has Denmark been able to, provide such strong national teams still, and also just provide such a massive talent pool that, can jump onto other teams? You saw it with Copenhagen Flames. They now have team players over in Fnatic, in G2, and they're having great success with it.
From my point of view, I think this is something we said the other day, Dennis, actually, is that Sweden like lacks a lot of in-game leaders, where you go to Denmark and it's just packed, right? So they're constantly just the knowledge is going around and around and around. You just got players coming up and getting taught how to play Counter-Strike at the highest level. So I think that's got to be the main reason for sure.
Yeah. I agree.
Me too.
It feels like you get like, as a player, you get like structure like way earlier in your career than in like most other scenes, right? So I feel like you almost have to become a more well-rounded player when you're coming up in Denmark. Whereas like for a lot of the other guys, you see guys that are just coming up now as maybe like FPL talents or whatever. Like it's going to be different. You're not going to have the same sort of understanding of the game because it's obviously completely different at the pro level. Whereas like I feel like almost all Danish players basically come up through teams and through the system, which is I think it's the way it should go in the future, because it creates teams like this. It's really cool.
Yeah,
I think
not wrong at
also
all.
with Denmark in particular, like I completely agree with the IGL point I was going to bring up if no one else did, but like I completely agree. I also think like there's a lot of players within the top teams who could be IGLs but who aren't. Like Refresh is a little bit of a bad example now because he kind of put it away again, but like he was from Heroic, moved to Sprout as IGO, and I think they had pretty decent results considering like the players and where they're supposed to be on like the ladder. So I think just there's a lot of good second callers also in Denmark that you can have on a team, and then even if they would be removed, they just go and make a new team and become IGL of that or something, and it like just expands all the time. But I think also it's part of it is Danish culture, we have this thing, I don't know if you're familiar, Aaron, but this thing called janteloven, which is like,
no, I'm not sure.
Spoken about. It's like this idea in Denmark that you are not better than anyone. So like we have very few very egotistical players, like which also in a way is something that Denmark, I guess, is lacking. We just talked about stavn. He could be the star, but he doesn't have that egotistical, like he has the talent to just take over a game, but Denmark don't see that as the way to win, you know. Whereas if you look at and I don't think it's a necessarily bad thing, but maybe a culture thing, that in the Balkan countries and stuff like this, we see a lot of star players come out, but we don't see a lot of top teams, kind of. So we have a lot of like high performance outputting fraggers, right? Like Nico, to some extent Hunter. You have like Bulgarian Orbos and Poison and Zerg that have been going around. These are people who their mental game is super strong and they just want to like take over the game and dominate, but they're playing there for themselves mostly, you know, at least originally. Whereas in Denmark, it's much more like a cultural thing to have like the team live as a unit, exactly what you said with Heroic, Dennis.
Yeah, I agree totally. Like always back in the days when I played in Fnatic and stuff, like Astralis was always the team that had the best team play, right? The teamwork was amazing. The tactical side was amazing. But what let's say Fnatic, for example, when I played there, we had the aim and the explosive play styles, but they always had the teamwork, and it feels like it's evolving in Denmark, and now it's like super big. Everyone's a good team player, and I 100% agree with you on that point.
Bro, it's like you're saying Danish culture, bro. It's like Counter-Strike is so fucking big over here.
Yeah.
Like it's ridiculous. It's like you got kids growing up, and like, I mean, 20 years ago it would have been, I don't know any like famous Danish football players, but I mean, a lot of kids would have been like 20 years ago, I want to be this Danish footballer. But now you got people growing up being like, fuck, I want to be like the Vice. Let's go. Like, you know, like it's just crazy how big Counter-Strike is over here. It's like, it's the CS nation for sure that's like carrying ahead right now. And it's crazy. Like I'll go shop to the local mall or something and see Astralis jerseys everywhere. Like, you know, it's just the whole culture over here is like, CS is like just crazy, right? I fucking love it.
And the kids, like, they have esports as a class in school, you know, and a lot of them, like, I don't know actually how much this is a thing in other countries, but also in Denmark, we had this thing where you go to like we just call it going to club, right? Where you can go and there's maybe a PC, or you can play a little bit football or like table tennis or whatever. But like people go there now and get like already at the age of 9 or 10, kind of not professional coaching, but coaching by people who are, you know, teachers, right? And I think that's also the fact that Denmark as a country have made esports a culture to the point that it's the same reason why Jamaica, for example, has a lot of the top runners of all time. It's because they seek out the top runners at a really early age, and then they just coach them to death, you know. Like that's what we do in Denmark, just in esports. And I think that's why it's not just Counter-Strike, it's League of Legends, it's all these other games as well, where Danish players, even for such a small country, we have a lot of the really top tier players.
No, it's funny you bring that up, like with the whole school system, because my nephew right now, he's 15 years old, and he's actually doing esports at school, bro. It's like rocking up to school and he's playing like Valorant, Counter-Strike. Like, how crazy is that, dude?
I know it's something recent that we've had in the UK, but you can take uni courses specifically for esports. But it's like you say, Denmark has such a large talent pool and produces players at the top. You look at League of Legends, and Bjergsen is one of the biggest names and one of the best players, you know, to have ever graced the LCS. And Denmark seems to be also similar to, you know, what League of Legends has in the likes of Korea and China. The players that play League of Legends, like Faker, they're the superstars, you know. Whereas you come to the UK and it's like Aaron said, the footballers are the big names, you know, your likes of your Harry Kanes. They're the people that they look up to over in the UK. But it's nice to see that it's, you know, gaining a bit of popularity, and the heroes can come from other things other than traditional sports. And one of the teams, just going off of the topic of producing such good players, MOUZ have been a team that consistently provide us with such a massive youth players and academy players. And I just want to ask, why do you think that is? Why are they able to consistently produce so many good young players?
Danish coach, right? Sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
Good scouting over there.
No,
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of truth to that. Like syrsoN has been obviously a huge part of it, like coming into the team, and it's also just been a scenario where like they haven't only brought in star players from the academy system, which I think was important. Like they brought in JDC, for example. So they clearly are looking at the more overall approach. I think this is going to be an interesting tournament for them because obviously Katowice didn't go well for them. I think they lost against Complexity to get knocked out. So like Complexity went on a good run, but I actually don't know where to place MOUZ right now because they have like so many kind of newer players on the team. It's a weird scenario where I feel like they're a good team for sure. Like I feel like they should be top 10 to be honest, but it's harder to say that because you don't know exactly like how the players are going to react to, I don't know, just going through maybe like a slightly tougher period because they don't have the experienced names on this team, right?
Yeah, it feels like either MOUZ is a top 10 team or they're gonna be like a top 30, right? It's I don't know. I have to watch them play this tournament and see where I can place them because it's a hard team to place. They have such new players and yeah, but I guess the players that they bring in and that they become so, they give them a chance, right, from the academy teams and stuff, and that's why they make so many new talents. Yeah, I guess that's it. They give them a chance. Not many teams do. Like this JDC guy, he played FPL for a long time, right? Proved himself, and then they just brought him in pretty much.
I mean, it's crazy, right? Like the team is so young. Like frozen, when you think about frozen, he's been in the scene for a while now. The guy's only 20 years old.
Oh,
like
shit.
it's like they have such a young team, but at the same time, I think they play as if they have experience too. Like the results that they had last year, they came, what was it, top 4 at the major, they came top 8 Cologne. So leading into Katowice and having the result that they did, I don't think it's I don't think they should think about it too much. I think it's more so they had that result, whatever, it's the first tournament of the year, let's keep going, and next tournament we'll show our best, you know. So I think them coming into ESL Pro League, I think they'll be pretty strong. And I got to back my boy Dexter also, since fellow
Yeah,
Aussie,
yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Also, like Kato was the first tournament of the year, right?
For them,
I mean, yeah, everyone was on the winter break and stuff, so I don't think that everyone was on their top of the game at that tournament, to be honest. But yeah, we'll have to see this tournament how they do.
I remember watching Katowice and seeing when they were talking to frozen, and it's almost like they kind of label him and treat him as the veteran of this team now. It reminds me a bit of the situation with like Rez in IP, because when he first came in, he was like this young gun coming in, and it's been so long now that they are now, you know, the oldest standing members in the team, maybe not in age, but in terms of how long they've been there. And do you think that teams can survive in that way? Do you think that having so many young players is survivable for a team, or do you think they do need that, you know, one member with all that experience to actually be there to exist?
Ooh, that's a tough one. But I guess experience is always nice, right? Especially in like the LAN environment. I believe like online, you don't really need it, to be honest. Like you need a good coach, perhaps, experienced coach. Sorry if you can hear the kids in the background, but yeah. But like on LAN, I believe that experience beats young players. Like
the MOUZ Academy in the background
mindset.
right now. Just like
Yeah, pretty much.
To make your own academy, bro.
Yeah.
Trying to get in on that. No, but I think also like something that is quite funny. Like if you think about it, you know, this MOUZ NXT team, and with syrsoN as the coach, like I know syrsoN really well. I played with him for definitely a couple of years. One of the best IGLs I ever played with, and it doesn't surprise me one bit that he is doing so well. But also when you look at the MOUZ Academy team, like looking at a player, even like syrsoN, right? He's the youngest guy. He's like, what, 17 or 18? A lovely guy. But you say he's inexperienced, and I would agree. But I think also part of it is that he's young. Like he hasn't been playing too many tier 1 tournaments, but these guys have more stage experience than me at 26, you know? They've played the Academy League, and they won it, what, 3 times in a row, right? And I think some of them even played the 4th time and also played on stage. So like in terms of controlling your emotions in a high pressure environment on LAN, these guys are not only sort of used to it and comfortable with it at a really early age, but they're also especially used to doing it together. And I think that's also a big reason. Like maybe if someone like syrsoN would go to arbitrary team phase, right? They have a lot of experience and can help him a whole lot, but maybe he reacts differently. Whereas just taking kind of the academy team and moving it to a higher tier, these guys are used to like, this guy gets a little bit more stressed on LAN, but I will calm him down. And I know also it's been said many times to me by syrsoN that JDC is like the dad of the team. Like he's really good at controlling everyone's emotions, at doing the mental side. Like, guys, let's make sure we're well rested. We need good food. Like, let's calm down. I know it's going to be a tough match, blah, blah, blah. And if you have these young players who are used to that kind of pressure, they might be inexperienced at like the pro leagues and the Katowice and the Major and the Cologne, but they are used to that kind of pressure, and maybe even more than some of the other top tier players who, hell, even Fesher, right, and Fnatic, 26, 27, something like this, and he has less experience than them. So yeah, it's hard not to tie experience to age, but for the MOUZ guys, you don't find people like Frozen or syrsoN or whatever who are that young with that much stage experience. Like they just don't come around, and they've managed to put them all in one team. I think that's why they managed to get the results they do, even though they have so many young players.
Yeah, I mean the way you explain it, it almost sounds like they built like this family in the academy, and they've just worked up together, right? So
Yeah.
it's going to be, like you said, it's going to be easier for them to adapt in the situations compared to if, like you said, syrsoN went to a phase where he's surrounded by big names and stuff like that too. So the way that they've come up is real nice, to be honest. Like,
yeah,
so,
It
yeah,
reminds me a lot of
sure.
like the Gambit roster that came up. You know, they came up in the academy,
right.
and now
Yeah.
you know, look at them. You like you say, you bring up all these players at once, and you have that foundation already built in. And I think that is something that a lot of these teams, you know, lack. Like ENCE recently have just dropped a player that they recently brought in, and maybe that's because, you know, they're not bringing players up together. You can see it in Fnatic with nikaDoz and Roy, the two players that come from the exact same team, and they slotted in a lot better than a lot of the recent players have. So it's interesting. But their first match, MOUZ, is up against syrsoN. And syrsoN missed out on Pro League last year, well, not last year, but the last season. And they're a team that we kind of come to expect to see here. I think it was For the Win who ended up taking their place, besting them in their regional tournament. Do you think syrsoN will be able to find success here? Do you think they stand much of a chance?
Yeah, to be fair, they do. Like they play good CS, but it feels like they always fall on like when they're about to do something good, they fall. They choke a bit almost. But they're a good team, and they play a lot. They play together. They do a lot of things right, I would say. So it's just a matter of time before they actually find some success. They're pretty like, yeah, they're good, I'd say.
Yeah, I think they definitely have like, it's just, I feel like they just maybe don't have like quite enough players in the scene, because like there's definitely a couple of really good players on this team. I remember who was it? I think it was, I don't remember which one of them it was, but there was someone who had like a really like big pop-off game at a previous Pro League, I remember, and they just like, they always seem to have a couple of players that can do really well, but it's just like, it's so hard when you have a full national team like this. Like, it's really hard to have all the pieces work together well, and it's almost like you kind of get locked into sticking with the same lineup sometimes, and then you don't have other options. So like, I don't know. I feel like they've got promise, but yeah, like Dennis is saying, it seems like whenever they're getting close to upset wins, it's like when you get to those mid-round situations, they always just seem to just kind of mess it up somehow, unfortunately. Yeah.
Similar to, I mean, if you hop across the country over to Movistar Riders, who are also in this group, you know, they're kind of coming from a region with such a limited pool of talent. It's going to be tough to, you know, to build up a team from that. And like you say, they get locked in, and where can they go from there? And unfortunately for Movistar, they have to face Heroic first. And how do you think they've done since they lost syrsoN? Do you think they've been able to adapt well with the addition of Martinez? Or do you think, there's still time for them to continue to grow and just see how they perform across this year?
I mean, I still think there's time for them to grow for sure. But definitely I think you felt the impact that syrsoN's had for them, right? Like they definitely have fallen off from what they used to be. Like I think their last result with him was it top 4 at Cologne? Is it like when before he left?
They made playoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he
it
left
was,
like
right?
right after
Did
that.
they,
Yeah.
did they beat
Yeah, and
Liquid in that stage?
I think
think
so, yeah.
so,
I think
yeah.
it was. Yeah, so it's crazy to like from going from that performance, and even before that, they were just on the steady rise up and up and up. But now they've lost a few games online and stuff, and it's definitely not the same. But I mean, you still got to give them time, right?
Yeah, but like when you lose such a good player, it's kind of maybe demotivating a bit. They lost a huge piece in their game, right? So
For
yeah,
sure.
it's tough. It could be tough to recover from that.
They also changed this deaths guy, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and I've seen it on multiple like Reddit comments and like HTTP threads and stuff like this that people like. I'm honestly not even sure myself, but I always thought that it was Alex that was the IGL, but some people seem to think that it was Deaths. I think it is and was Alex, but it is quite interesting as well, which is so nice about Counter-Strike is that Deaths was very clearly like the bottom performer statistically, right? But I think it's highly likely that losing him as well changed something in the team. Like you have to have a guy on a team who does the dirty work. And the guy that they brought in, syrsoN, I don't think he's a bad player, but I don't think he's that guy. So now maybe they have a system where you have 5 people who all want to like be good performers, right? And that can be good. We saw it with Outsiders removing Sanji. Now, obviously, they like won a major. It took them a while, but there are also times where you remove the bottom performer who is doing this dirty work, and the team never recovers. So obviously, as you guys are mentioning, syrsoN is a huge piece to lose, but they maybe also lost a bit of their identity, like removing 2 players, and since then it has been horrendous, like results-wise, considering where they were. I think they were even top 10 at some point.
Yeah.
And
top 5 almost.
Yeah.
It's crazy, like consistently good performances in big tournaments, and you just thought sky's the limit. They were actually setting, in my opinion, the meta with like the smoke on top of the sandbags on Vertigo and stuff like this. I think they were kind of the ones that invented it, and people are still doing it. So it was like a super fresh breath of air, but yeah, there's something missing there for sure.
Yeah, I know that now that Ents have syrsoN, I think they've talked about like the fact that he brings quite a lot of, he's almost like the secondary cooler basically on the team is what they're saying. So maybe that's something that was, maybe he was helping. Maybe it was more like, honestly, with everything I've heard from Movistar Riders, it kind of feels like they didn't have like a clear in-game leader. Because I've heard the same things. It's like I've heard Alex, I've heard Deaths, I've heard that syrsoN was helping out. Like I wonder if it was almost just like kind of other people having ideas, and now maybe they're missing some of that. But then they came to this the LAN in Malta, and they finally started getting a couple of results there. Like they beat Spirit, for example. And I feel like I always see Movistar Riders do so much better on LAN whenever I feel like I see them play. Because whenever I've watched them, they look like they always get along together really well. They seem really close-knit. And I kind of wonder whether sometimes when it's just like all these online games, if it is just tough for them to just, I don't know, fully get their heads in the game. So I'm kind of hoping that the LAN of Pro League will help them out in that sense. I think they could maybe do something, but I don't know, it's kind of a tough group, I feel like, based on some of the other teams. So I don't know.
We've seen Movistar and syrsoN in a lot of events. They seem to pop up a lot. I feel like people that aren't even regular viewers of Counter-Strike can see Movistar and be like, oh, it's that Spanish team. And I like you saying, Alex, syrsoN, I heard as well when we spoke about in the IM Rio podcast we did, we were saying that syrsoN was that secondary caller for them and someone that had such an impact. And as we have 2 IGLs here, how crucial is that secondary call? Like how much does that actually add to a team?
I mean, for me in the past, if anyone was like confident enough to do it, or in the game if someone was feeling it, then that would relieve like so much pressure off of me, right? Like have someone on the other side of the map being able to call rotations and to do this and this and this and whatnot, like it's so much impact. And in today's game, today's meta, you need to be having that, not even just like one person helping with it. It should be like multiple people, I feel like. So I think to lose that into a team and then have a team that loses their in-game leader every day apparently or something, but it's just a new person, like it's pretty crazy. So I mean,
Yeah.
so to what you said though, it's definitely a lot of impact lost if you don't have the secondary leader, and they can definitely add a lot for sure.
Yeah, I agree. You definitely need like everyone to participate in the calling today. Like you must have it to be able to beat these top teams because they do it. So one or two callers doesn't work really. Everyone needs to put in some work on that side.
Yeah, there's a lot of instability I feel around, you know, the IGL role. We saw it a bit with Vitality when we had MBK and Alex kind of taking a side each, whether that was working. And I even remember there was a period where NIP weren't entirely sure on who they wanted to call. I'm pretty sure they put Get Right in for some part of a tournament and swapped it back to Lecro and vice versa. And yeah, I just don't feel like you can succeed because surely that's a massive part of your identity that you lose if you're constantly swapping out or not sure who your IGL is.
Yeah, like the Heroic team I joined back in 2019 as well. I think when I joined them, they were not doing so hot. It was like number 40 in the world or something like this, which for Heroic standards were not that great. And just before I joined, they had like replaced Asilion, who was the IGL. And then the IGL role was being juggled between BlameF and Freiburg almost event to event. And then as soon as I joined, it was only BlameF, never anyone else. And we went to like, I think number 12 or 11 in the world before I was removed. And that was in the space of 3 or 4 months. So like, it felt very much like they were also juggling the IGL role, but as soon as they went and actually decided on a specific person, it helped out a whole lot. And I agree also with Dennis that or actually both of Aaron and Dennis, that in the current Counter-Strike, like these top teams are doing it. Like every player is talking and making plans and doing whatever. You need an IGL who has like an overall plan, but you need people to make micro decisions and get people on board with their like plays all the time. And the teams who don't manage to have like a set IGL, who are switching the role around all the time, it rarely works. I can't come up with a single instance of a team who was swapping IGLs event to event who actually had a good result.
I mean, it sounds horrible, right? Like, it's just no consistency. And then also, like, coming into a team, and if you don't know, like, who's in-game leading and you're questioning it, there's just, like, no confidence either. So, at the end of the day, it sounds ridiculous.
Yeah. Felt like the only one I can think of is the old school, like, Polish VP lineups, but I feel like they were just their own thing. I don't even know what was going on there. So, I'm going to say they're, like, the exception that proves the rule more than anything.
I think it's clear that how crucial a second caller can be. I mean, you saw how Liquid projected in the rankings, and just in terms of performances, as soon as they added Jakinda, someone who, you know, they said was such a voice in the team, and they've improved massively. But this group does feel a lot like it's a lot of national teams. Another one that we can look at is Big, and they recently dropped syrsoN. I just want to get your guys' takes on that because it's another country where, personally, I don't see a massive talent pool.
I would never drop syrsoN. I believe he's really good. He makes a lot of space, and he does crazy plays, right? But I think he was good. I don't know why they dropped him, but perhaps they're not satisfied with losing a lot. So perhaps they felt like they needed a change, but I don't believe he was the guy to change, honestly.
I thought it might have been more like syrsoN's decision. I wasn't really sure, but that's the way it kind of felt to me. It seemed like maybe he wanted to step down because, yeah, I agree. I don't know why. It makes no sense for them to make that decision because, like, when you were watching Big, syrsoN was like one of the few AWPers who you would just get put completely by himself in a strategy and he would somehow like make it work and be looking between angles. And it was like a really hard role to play. And he's one of the few AWPers who I think was actually able to do that. So I always loved watching syrsoN play. So that's a shame. But from what I've heard, apparently the new guy Hyped had a pretty good qualifier for Rio at least. So it seems like maybe there's some promise there. I don't really know much about the guy, but I guess this is the first chance we get to see him. So I'm excited for that.
The only thing I can really say, I guess, is, I mean, Big are one of the teams that, like, in the online era, COVID or whatever, they were really popping off, right? And syrsoN was like the big reason behind that too. Like, he was having MVP worthy performances and stuff like that. But as it's come back to land, like, it's not like he's a hugely bad player and then like that, but I feel like he doesn't have the same impact as what he does online. And that if Big were to take him out, I think that would be the reason. But at the end of the day, you don't know. You can't really know without being in the team and stuff. But he's still a solid player for sure. But like you said, this hype kid has come in and he actually played pretty good for the team at the closed qualifier. So I'm interested to see what he can do and what they can do to evolve in the future for the team of Big.
There's a lot of young AWPers coming up through the scene, and Big are someone that just lost their AWPer, and Complexity, who they play against, gained a new AWPer from a different region in Hallzerk, and he had an incredible performance at Katowice. And someone else on that team that's been, showing what they're truly capable of is Grim. He didn't exactly have the showing he wanted in Liquid, but he's come to Complexity, and I think he's arguably the star of their team at the minute.
Yeah,
So
I love
definitely a good
Hallzerk,
matchup
by
for
the way.
them.
Yeah, I've watched enough of Complexity's content to know that he's not from a different region. His name is Randy, whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas he
I'll
says,
need me some of them
yeah,
more.
that's it. Do you think his time during Dignitas is something that's kind of helped him as well to grow as a player, being around that much experience? Do you think that's helping him to become the player he is?
Yeah, it should. Like but he was good before as well. Like he's a strong upper, really strong. I think he's gonna keep getting better as well. But like when you watch him last time, he was actually taking a lot of space, doing a lot of plays, doing a lot of the stuff that he did before. Like in the beginning when he joined Dignitas, he was really good, right? He was super good actually. But then he dropped off a bit. But I believe it's not because of him. It's because, I don't know, the team wasn't a really good team, to be honest, but he's a really good player. Okay. And I think he's gonna keep showing.
That's what you really feel, bro.
Yeah. Off stream.
Maybe they needed Dennis in there instead.
Yeah.
Who doesn't?
I mean, ever since Hallzerk joined, they've just been like pretty fucking good, right?
Yeah.
Like when they had Junior, they were just coming last at every single tournament. They didn't seem like, they just seemed dead, like a dead team almost. But since he's come in, I mean, he's probably revamped them, given them a lot of energy, because the guy's pretty hype on that too. Like, he's sitting there fucking yelling at people and stuff. Like, he does not give a shit, and I fucking love it, bro.
Yeah.
I love watching it, man. And even like at Katowice, he had like his breakout performance, bro. So I mean, I think he's doing a really good job. And like you said before, Grim, like, is another player where he played in Liquid, but he wasn't given his like his roles, right? His aggressive roles that he likes to play, and him coming to Complexity now and getting those roles back, you can feel it slowly. He's getting his confidence back, and he's just absolutely smashing people because the guy has insane aim. So as Complexity in all, they've just been like going up and up and up, and now they're like, what are they? I think they're number 10 right now on HLTV. So I think they're on a good path for sure.
Yeah, man. It's if Hallzerk can keep up that form, like, I actually think there's even more room for this team, because I still think Fang and Floppy can perform better than they've shown us. Like, Floppy, I know, is someone who's really happy taking a lot of the bad spots. I also feel like he's a really good trade fragger when he has to be, and he's been like, I wouldn't say he's in his best form recently. And then Fang, I haven't like looked as in depth into Fang, but everyone at NA says he's like a really talented prospect. There was a period in like, I think it was 2021, where he had a couple of months where I thought he was going to be a real star on this team. Yeah, man. And he's like, he's playing okay, but honestly, like, if Hallzerk can keep that up, this team actually is like really scary, because JT is also like, he's a sick caller. I think there was a time period where JT was just running way too many set plays almost every round, and he was like kind of stuck in his ways. And he now has really opened up his game, and he's happy to default more. I think he's happy to give his players like way more space. I love the progression he's had as a caller, and I think it's showing now that this team is really, really solid.
Yeah, that's quite funny because like about Grim, if we go back,
Yeah.
he was before he joined Liquid, he was super good, right? He was. I was actually very impressed when I watched him play. He has great aim, right? And then he joined Liquid and he dropped off. He played pretty bad, but I guess that's also because he didn't get enough space maybe. And now when he gets the space, he's back, and that's huge. And also on what's good for JT, I guess with an APR like Halzerk, they can just rely on him making a lot of calls in the beginning, getting an entry, doing plays, and APR has a lot of impact in the beginning of the round. Like if they want to go somewhere, if they want to do this or that, you can adapt around after them. So I think it's a combination of all of this, which makes them, yeah, they look really good, I'd say. So it's gonna be fun watching them play.
Do you think that the minds of jabbi and tabseN kind of make this matchup a bit more even though Big have just got a new AWPer?
It's tough, but like Big, they're always good, right? tabseN, I think he's a lot better than what we see because he's played in Big for such a long time.
Yeah.
I think he would fit in any of the tier 1 teams. But yeah, it's gonna be a good game, definitely. I think it's gonna be a close game actually.
But about tabseN, right? Isn't it also, and I hate to be the one saying it because it's not like I've heard someone else kind of say it, but isn't it also about time we start questioning like his leadership capabilities? Because as you mentioned, Aaron, during the Corona period, they were number 1 pretty consistently, right? And Big have always been known, especially like jabbi, I guess, to be like super creative and coming up with tactics that no one ever even thought of finding a crazy grenade that's never been shown before, something like this. And now they've like recycled all the German talent. Like I know also there's been a ton of issues with one guy gets ill one tournament and then another guy, and then like, oh, now syrsoN. But like you have syrsoN who during the COVID era of Counter-Strike, I think he was number 6 in the world or something like this, like an absolute top tier AWPer, right? And obviously he has a drop off on LAN, but then you have like pretty solid players in Kito and Faven, and like there's a lot of, I think even tabseN was doing a good job when he was there. And like at some point, even though I think tabseN is a phenomenal player, and I completely agree with what you said, Dennis, he could walk into kind of any tier 1 team, and I think he would make them better, or at least definitely not be a weakness.
Yeah.
There also comes a point where we have to just say Big have not won shit. Like they have not won anything, since that COVID era. And you have to at some point also point the finger at the IGL. Even though I think individually his performance is really solid, maybe what the German scene needs is like a jabbi to come up, like a young German guy who starts his career by being IGL. And I feel like those we are missing. I know when I was playing in Sprout, there was this guy called Dude, who was kind of, he was kind of thought to be like the jabbi coming in, like a super good mind and stuff like this, but he transitioned into coaching like super early and just ended his career. And I think he could have potentially made it with time, but like, I'm just not sure, even though I love tabseN, great guy, phenomenal player, and I think he's too good for Big. We have to start at some point asking questions like, is he the right IGL for the team? Because I don't think so anymore, honestly.
Yeah, it's true what you say, but like I think it's what you said as well. Perhaps they lack in game leaders. Every country does. Like you search everywhere for game leaders, right? Except for Denmark, you have a lot. But like, yeah, that's yeah, should be the reason, right?
Of all the names out there, I do like the one that AZR laughs at is Dude.
Yeah, this guy.
I think
Go
I think
ahead.
there's been like another guy I think he was in Astralis talent right now. His name is Bro or something like that.
yeah. It's his last name. It's his last name though.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
Okay,
His last name is Bo,
shit.
which means bridge. So it's like
okay.
less so.
Right.
But
yeah,
it
yeah.
is pretty funny, like because a lot of people
Dude
read it
and
and
Bro,
be
they
like,
have to be in a
bro.
slim team at some point.
Yeah. What's up, dude? What's up, bro?
Finally, on the tabseN, the whole identity there, I was convinced he was going to end up on G2 when they were searching for another IGL. I thought that was going to be the perfect fit for them. I mean, they can probably be glad that they did get HooXi now, but yeah, I mean, that's where I thought he'd end up on.
I mean, I think tabseN said basically like he's had all the opportunities in the past. He just decided not to take them because he believes in like the bringing up the German scene. Like to him, that's the thing that feels most rewarding. So he's kind of almost like accepted. It seems like that he might not go international, and he'd rather just try and make this German project work. But it is definitely a scenario where it's like he could definitely go back to being just a player on the team. If there was another good caller they could bring in, he's obviously got the talent for that. So yeah, I don't know. I guess it depends on the expectations you have for Big, because I look at the lineup, like they do have pretty good players, but I don't know if I can say that I expect them to win anything is the tough thing. Like, I don't know if they quite have enough talent at that point. But also, actually, I look at this group, I'm actually kind of scared they might not even make it through this group. I'm a little scared. I'm not going to lie.
We'll go through that at the end as well to see
We
everyone's
will.
expectations, because it will be interesting how many of you think Big will be. But just another thing on what you were saying there, Alex, it does seem that they do just seem to win at least an event a year, though. I don't know, from my perspective, I'm pretty sure they won the Rubek Cup last year. And
Oh,
I think that
Jeez.
event was a bit of a mess though with the final, and only
final was
3
on
players
there.
were on the stage. I might be remembering this wrong, but there was definitely an event where only like 3
I don't think
of
that
the
was even a
players
LAN. I'm pretty
ended
sure it was
up on
online.
stage. Was it online?
Yeah.
I do remember an event though last year where I think someone may have got COVID and only 3 players ended up on the stage from Big, which may have benefited syrsoN from playing from his bedroom, but
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
who
you know
knows?
what they say about Germans online.
That's true. Yeah.
It's definitely an interesting team, and whether they can actually bring themselves together to make it. I mean, they have the ability to surprise anyone really. They you never know what to expect from Big. But the final 2 teams, it's a big one for a first game, and it's Imperial against FURIA.
Yeah.
Who, if you're Brazilian,
Derby.
who do you stand by?
Ooh, I don't know, man.
I feel like the
don't know.
Fallen love is so strong there. They just love Fallen, man.
Same.
Whoever
same.
if Fallen switched for Furia just before the match, they'd all switch with each other.
Yeah,
I mean, he's
he's
the
really
professor,
big.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Imperial dropped FUR and FNX, was it earlier last month, I believe. And
Oh, you mean FUR?
yeah, how do you feel about that? Because I'm pretty sure they FNX was let go as well from the coaching staff.
Oh
So,
yeah, no, you're right.
Oh, I forgot he was the coach.
Yeah, which was an interesting move already. But
Yeah.
I mean, are your hearts here, set that FURIA will take this, or are we still worried? Because again, FURIA have been a team that haven't been putting up the results we expect from them. They had a good run at the major, but besides that, they make playoffs. They're FURIA. They make playoffs. That's what we expect from them. But they never seem to actually make it much further. We need to see a win from them.
I think that, to me, and I would love the IGL perspective here from Dennis and Aaron especially, is that like I feel like FURIA's style is just kind of not sustainable in the long term, like that's a worry I've always had, and it's actually again another kind of point that I would give to the Danish IGLs and what Dennis also said earlier. Danish Counter-Strike is so based on team play and structure and like everyone being on the same page, whereas the style of FURIA is all about like thriving in the chaos, kind of like the old Fnatic with Dennis. Like that you created so much chaos, everyone's taking fights everywhere, and the structure teams struggle to keep the structure because the info was just like everyone was talking at the same time, and that style works. But the problem is, I don't feel like the current FURIA team. They have good players, obviously, like Kisarato is insane, but Art has had like over the years an individual drop off, and I also feel like Yuri used to be like a really solid second star. I think he still is, but he's not like a world beater. And so when FURIA right now meet the structure teams who also have aim, like FaZe, for example, I feel like they just get dumpstered. The same way that I think Heroic, they have better individual players, and they have a system that also is good in the chaos, but they are also just better in the system. So like for FURIA, their style is one that can beat any opponent on any day. They can beat the number 1 in the world, but then they can go the next day and they can lose to number 25. And that's why it's not sustainable. You won't see them picking up tournament wins because there's a high volatility in their style that they can beat anyone, they can also lose to anyone. And that way you will never have a deep like playoffs run. I know it almost happened at the major, but But other than that, like, they show up, we expect them to go to playoffs, but we don't expect them to go to the final or win the final. That's how I see it. And I think it's down to their style that it's just not sustainable. But again, I would love a perspective from the IGOs.
I mean, so for FURIA, for me, especially versus team in the past, they've always like relied on openings from art like all the time. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But after you run the same thing so many times, like these structured teams are just going to punish you for it. Like, so I'm assuming that's what happened at Katowice. I didn't watch any of their games, but I'm assuming they might have just ran the same stuff and teams just punished them for it. But for them to come into this, into Pro League and really stand out is, I think they need to revamp a lot. And like you said, like it's just pure chaos, and the structured teams just completely go ahead. So, like for them to keep going forward, I think the stars just need to pop off. Like you said, syrsoN, Yuri, and so on. Like it's either they pop off or it feels like it's, I don't know, they hit like a brick wall when they're playing on their T side or something like that. But yeah, it's always been chaos with FURIA. Playing them, watching them, it's always chaos. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with what both of you say. Like, but like it feels like the chaos play style is kind of outdated, and that's why they drop off.
Yeah.
Like a structured team, let's say, I don't know, anyone, FaZe. Let's take FaZe for example. Like they're gonna be ready for any play that Art makes, right? So if he tries to rush through a smoke or through a molly, they're gonna be ready for it. They make a game plan for it when they play FURIA. So. Yeah, I agree. They should like remove their playbook and just make a new one.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. You know what sucks as well is I think syrsoN, he might be like the second best rifler in the world. Honestly,
Yeah.
like this guy is crazy
bro.
good. Like I feel bad watching these games, man, because I was casting some of the games at Katowice, and on Anubis, for example, he was playing as like the A site anchor, and they just lost the B site round after round after round. And syrsoN was just sitting there watching the kill feed, watching them just slowly lose against IHC. They got knocked out by IHC. Like that's the thing. It's not even like you can say that like the talent they're losing to teams with like massive skill there. IHC played like a really nice structured game. They played with confidence in a lot of moments. They had some big moments, but FURIA, it really feels to me like I don't think they're going to change Art ever is the problem, but I don't know how much longer you can keep him because there is a lot of talent on this team, and I don't feel like they're getting the most out of their players. Here's another thing I'm actually interested in to ask to you guys. Apparently, they had a 1-month boot camp in Europe before Katowice. Do you think that's like,
really?
what do you think of that? I'm interested.
It seems like a good idea, to be honest. But
A little
You go.
embarrassing, though.
I
After their
guess it
performance.
depends how long they had off, right?
Yeah.
I'm surprised that they had a one month and did they come last?
They didn't even
Katowice?
make it to
Yeah.
Katowice, though, right? They,
Oh,
Oh no,
Yeah.
they got
they
knocked
did,
out
yeah,
in the
they got knocked out in the
play-ins,
play-ins,
didn't they?
yeah.
So I'm pretty surprised by that then, that they had a 1-month boot camp and struggled.
That
to be
I guess the
honest.
question would be because when I was watching, it felt to me like it almost felt like they were feeling the pressure in those games.
Yeah.
Because I was wondering if like a boot camp that long makes you think like, oh wow, we've had a whole month prepping for
Yeah.
this tournament, and we better not like mess it up.
I was gonna
Was
bring
there-
that up. Like, you can go, Aaron.
I was just gonna say that was their last tournament. I haven't actually checked. It was their last tournament, the major. I think they had a
Yeah,
massive break
believe
in
so.
between.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
They had nothing.
like a lot of teams, like they struggle when they have such a huge break, and maybe that could have been the thing.
Yeah.
Them for sure, but 1 month is pretty crazy though.
yeah,
But it is actually true though, like what you bring up, Alex. Like, I wanted to mention this before you said it, but having really good prep can be really good, and most of the time it is. But something like this, where you're investing, like especially when you're living away from home, you must know that, Aaron, as well. Like if you're living away from home, it seems like there is more pressure on you to perform, because it's like, what am I doing this for if not for the results, kind of thing. And so if you do a full month of boot camp, you've done everything. Sometimes that can be like, we're so comfortable, everything is, we know everything. But other times it can be the inverse, that we have had 1 month long boot camp. If we can't make it now, we cannot make it. And then that becomes pressure, So now that they've lost this, maybe now they're already starting like mentally thinking like, okay, we did everything we could. How do we not have the result that we want? and then this can even go on for multiple events. That's also why I don't think they're going to lose to Imperial, but I'm not convinced they're going to have an outstanding performance in this tournament. I could be surprised because, again, they are highly volatile in their playstyle, but yeah, it can be a good and a bad thing.
Probably so tough for them with how close the major is as well. They making such a big change to your IGL at this point. That's concerning for anyone.
I think like about the 1 month bootcamp, it could be good for a team like FURIA, but also they really need to have some time off right on the bootcamp. They can't play like 7 days a week. They prac and they play FPL and they play it. That's not going to work. Then you're going to just get burned out.
Yeah.
So really important to have time off, like do stuff, and that could be really hard when you're not at home, right? Then you perhaps what am I gonna do? Like, am I gonna what should I do? What can I do?
I mean, talking from experience, like you're saying, the burnout factor, right? Like I remember before we went into, it was similar how this year started. At the start of 2020, we had like a Blast tournament, and then we led into Katowice. But before the Blast tournament, we had like a 3 to 4 week boot camp, and we were just going crazy with it all, right? And then we had pretty suffering result at the Blast. And we came to the conclusion is because we're just doing way too much and burning ourselves out even before the competition started. And then before that, we had like another 5-day boot camp before Katowice, and it wasn't as strenuous, and we had a way better result. So I think the burnout factor for sure is a thing, because especially you put so much pressure on yourself if you're just playing as much and you think you need to play more and more and more, but at the end of the day, you don't. You just need to relax and play your game. So, yeah.
Maybe what they need is a Danish IGL in there.
Now about the IGL part, what do you think about this guy Drop? Because he's not been performing too well, right, in this team.
I think that's right. I think he plays super high sensitivity, which again feeds into the but like that's actually always something that I noticed, that if you have a young player who plays a very high sensitivity, I more get the feeling that they're winning their duels on aim, right? And that can work in the lower tiers of Counter-Strike. But if I'm picking between, see if I can find a rifle with a high sensitivity. Let's just say if I'm picking between a Stair from Sprout, right, or a Madden from or an Elise, right? But like Elise even he has a very high sensitivity, but someone like Madden as well, he is even higher than Elise, right? And if I'm picking between those two players, I'm looking for what kind of role am I looking for as well? But I just think a guy with a lower sensitivity will be playing more on brain than aim, and so will more easily translate to tier 1 CS. Like, so someone like Drop, I think he works probably pretty well in the style that FURIA wants to play, but it's possible that he just doesn't have it, kind of. Like, maybe he is kind of playing it as if it's FACEIT in a way. I don't know him too well, but I'm wondering if, and I wanted to ask this at least to the group, like, just as a thought experiment, right? What would happen if we took Fallen from Imperial and put him in FURIA, and he starts calling a more traditional kind, like a brand of Counter-Strike with the players that they have? Because player-wise, they're, I think, competitive.
Yeah, that could actually work. It's a good idea. Like, drop and bring in Fallen.
drop. Bring drop.
It's an interesting thought, right? Like, Fallen is an opera who's calling. They could go double up pretty easy. They have crazy players and they get a new play style. It's interesting.
I think it's something we'll present to them after the podcast. Before we wrap up, I just want to get your guys' thoughts on who do you think are the 4 teams that will make it to playoffs from this group. So you say it's a tight group, I think.
I guess Heroics is like the no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
So you just think of them just going through the group pretty easy. For me, after that, I'd have to say MOUZ, probably going through.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's I guess it can be a little bit wishy-washy, right?
Yeah.
Do we think FURIA and
Complexity? Yeah, at least Complexity I have decent faith in.
Yeah.
I agree with Aaron. Heroic and MOUZ are the 2 ones I'm fully expecting.
Yeah, and perhaps like FURIA maybe.
are we not entirely sure on Furia? There seems to be a fair
Ah.
bit of hesitation around them. Who, if not Furia, who do you think then stands the next best chance?
Probably big.
Yeah.
Or Movistar.
Yeah, it'd have to be big.
Yeah.
Imperial, we didn't talk about them too much, but they're also like they're not bad. They're definitely a
Yeah, I don't
team that
think
could
they're bad
cause
at all.
upsets. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I
Honestly,
think
man, that
also.
Brazilian scene, mate, there's got to be some big shuffle you could do to get like two
Yeah.
crazy good teams. There's so many, there's so much talent.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah.
mad.
stop the small shuffles and just have one massive one that
Yeah, why
creates,
not?
creates
Honestly.
two Brazilian super teams. It doesn't sound like a bad idea, but yeah, this has been our Group B preview. You can expect to see these guys again coming up in the future episodes for another great chat about. Well, Group C will be the next one. So I don't even know what teams are in there, but it seems it's just
Find
so
out
many
next
good
time.
teams. Yeah, it's great. But yeah, you can find all these guys down in the description. You can check them out on Twitter. The usual like, subscribe, all of that nonsense. And yeah, I'll catch you guys later. Thanks for watching.
Yeah.
Just goes.
See ya.